All right. Celebrating in Norman, Oklahoma, Brownie. I know we were just finishing watching that one. West Virginia played their guts out. I had a lot of teams play their guts out today, you know?
That was tough if you were a favorite. Clemson loses on the road as a favorite.
Oh,
You
save it,
see,
save it, save it, save it for the show, man.
I
Save it
think
for the
everybody
show.
knows. I think everybody knows Clemson lost on the road.
I
Clemson,
thought you were
NC
about to give
State.
thought you were about to give me a hot take before we get rolling
No,
here.
Clemson lost on the road. That was a tough win for Oklahoma at home. They never led that game till the clock hit zero. That was their first lead of the game. So Neil Brown and West Virginia played their tails off on that one. Michigan State at home in Nebraska. It's a fun Saturday. What do you
It
think is
was.
the best window? The end of the 2:30 window?
That was good. I mean, because you had
It was.
the surprising Auburn game.
Yeah.
That made it good, and you had the Clemson, NC State happening, and
Arkansas.
Arkansas, which that I know the game was in doubt, I guess, till the end, but really never felt like it. Save it for the show, Jim.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess it was the afternoon window. I mean,
At
tonight
2:30.
for a while, Tennessee and Florida was fun, and West Virginia, I
Yeah.
was cheering for them, and you know, and Alabama was never in doubt, but it was fun
No,
to
it was
watch them
not.
run up and down the field. Good light show in Tuscaloosa. Enjoyed that. So, all right, we're populating it up. Do you give it a retweet from yours, and we'll get going here?
I am in
Yeah,
the process of doing that.
because when I was practicing with some of this stuff this week, we ended up jacking some stuff up, and I deleted your account to set it up there. So if you do the
Why would you do
retweet,
that? Why would you
yeah,
do
we
that?
were we were trying other things.
You
We
want
tried to work
a
we tried to work in Twitch and this and that. Ended up needing an upgrade to get this and that. So we're
you want a hot take on the Ryder Cup?
you want that before we get going here?
No,
Yeah,
it's over, man. We're blowing
we
that one out.
we are live. We'll do our official stuff here in a second, but it's is it done? I mean, what is it? 11-5? No way we can lose it.
Oh yeah, I mean that was. I think the biggest comeback ever on a Sunday is 4 points,
Okay.
and the U.S. is up 6. So yeah, I mean that thing's over. I don't
All
even
right.
think we could blow that one there.
Well, that's a shame. You
Was
have
it a shame?
you have your Bowden. Well, wanted it to be exciting. Now I'm getting no excitement in the Ryder Cup tomorrow. No
That is
Antonio
correct.
Brown. No Antonio Brown for my Buccaneers. He's out with a positive test of COVID, which means we may have other people out by the time we
Right.
get there and play tomorrow against the Rams, best team in football.
Uh-huh.
So it's going to be an interesting day. All right,
Yep.
let's do this, man. Let's get
Let's
going.
go.
All right. Get my clock ready. And we will do this. Appreciate having all you folks in here. Don't forget you can comment as well. We do have Brian Harson. We can get to that as well. All right, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Jim Dunaway, Ryan Brown, our Saturday breakout here live with you on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and everywhere in our Next Round Live family. And of course, if you're not catching this live on Saturday night, you're catching it on replay as we get ready for a live show again coming up at 9 o'clock on Monday Central Time. Brownie, it was one of those interesting days. We have to start with our friends down at Auburn, where they survived. They beat Georgia State, but it took a 98-yard drive and the other quarterback, not named Bo Nix, to get it done. We'll hear from Brian Harson in a second, but why don't you just jump in quickly and give me your thoughts on the quarterback switch and what you saw from TJ Finley getting in there.
I don't think he was a ton better than Bo Nix. I know he led Auburn on that game-winning drive. You know, he brought a different kind of energy. I don't know. Sometimes when you go to the backup, and just maybe it alerts the team, wakes everybody up. I don't know. I just don't know that this is the long-term fix that anybody wants it to be. He came in, he led a game-winning drive. He also, missed some open guys, missed some touchdown throws, but you got to give him credit, man, on that fourth down. He scrambled, he kept it alive, and he found Shedrick Jackson in the end zone for the touchdown. So he leads the game-winning drive. I don't know what you do if you're Brian Harsin, Jim. I don't know if you start TJ Finley at LSU, if you start Bo Nix. Starting a guy that knows he's on a short leash a lot of times is worse than benching him. So Brian Harsin won this game. Auburn won this game, but I think Brian Harsin leaves it with a ton of questions right now. He's got to answer.
Well, let's start with Brian Harsin's opening statement and post-game this afternoon, early this evening, as Auburn holds off Georgia State to get the homecoming win, their 30th consecutive homecoming.
All right, well, I'll tell you what I told the guys in the locker room. They found a way to win. Proud of those guys for doing that, and a lot of credit to Georgia State. Those guys played extremely hard, and I thought from an offensive standpoint, very difficult with that style of offense and how they play, especially at the speed, to replicate that in practice. And so we had to make some adjustments, and guys had to play fast consistently throughout the game. We did that. We were able to make some good adjustments in the second half. It was good to have Zacoby back in there as well. Defensively, I thought Georgia State did a great job.
Okay, so that's Brian Harsin there. It's a win, right? But let's talk about let's do that first. Let's do the positive first, because that's a shorter list than the negatives. The positives,
to say the least.
The positives is that TJ Finley came in back against the wall, 98 yards, won the football game. Shedrick Jackson worked in a scramble fire drill situation to work open and made the touchdown catch. They also converted a 2-point conversion. They get the pick six afterwards. All that's positive to win the game. You can't take that away. That's a positive situation. 98 yards to go, back against the wall. You're not even the starting quarterback, and you're in that situation. That's not an easy situation for them to get the W.
It's not. It's made easier by the fact that it's Georgia State. It is not an SEC team. It's not a high-level SEC team. So, those things are positives, and I don't mean to try to make them into negatives, but even the positives you have there, Jim, you have to step back and say, my gosh, how were you even in that situation against Georgia State? But maybe you learned something from it. I don't know. Maybe this is the thing that wakes you up and helps you to realize your shortcomings. It's just so weird to see what this team looked like in Happy Valley against a Penn State team that is a pretty good football team, a top 10 like team. They were nothing close to that today. And I get that teams are going to play different levels, but they were nothing close to that today. It was such a bizarre difference from where they were just 1 week ago tonight.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we've had a number of people tell us over the years that the Penn State situation, prime time, national TV, game day, that's a player's game. And a week like this with Georgia State coming off that atmosphere, heartbreaking loss, your first one of the year on the road. Now you're back playing a Sun Belt team at home. It's homecoming. A lot of distractions. Not going to have the easy, amped up situation you had last week. That's a coach's game. So if you're looking around the room tonight and you're Brian Harsin, you're Derek Mason, you're Mike Bobo, you got to think to yourself that you probably didn't do the best job of getting your team ready this week to be ready to play a team like Georgia State. In my opinion, this was a coach's game.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think if you're Derek Mason, it is an alarming trend, Jim, how often guys are just wide open for touchdowns. They continue to have communication issues in that defense and coverage breakdowns. And it beat you against Penn State. It almost beat you today against Georgia State. And if you continue to do it against the LSUs and Arkansas and Texas A&Ms and Alabamas and people like that of the world, you're going to lose games doing that. I mean, you just cannot give up easy touchdowns that way. And for whatever reason, Auburn secondary continues to get confused. I don't know if it was a Kobe McLean coming back. I would not say that was the one thing that changed this whole thing, but he was back for the second half.
That's a big factor.
It was a big factor, Jim, and what I was getting to is it's something you do have to remember in the first half of this game. You're without Zacoby McLean. This whole game you're without Owen Popo. So that's two of your best defenders that are not there. Now, again, this is Georgia State. You should be able to miss those guys and beat Georgia State handily. So, yeah, there are some massive concerns on both sides of the ball, and really special teams too. Heck, you got a Carlson missing kicks. It's bad. So, I mean, I just think all around this was just a horrible performance by Auburn that, you bail out at the end.
Okay, now I want to ask you about Sean Elliott's comments, the Georgia State head coach. He made a comment afterwards that said basically the SEC officials bailed Auburn out on that catch down to the 19-yard line. It was the tight end, Samuel Schinker, Schenker, who made the catch, but Sean Elliott thought the ball hit the turf. What did you think of the replay there?
Well, I thought the ball hit the turf. I thought it was a terrible call. I was very surprised that they were able to keep that ball. And look, I don't blame Sean Elliott for getting upset about that. I mean, you're a Sun Belt team playing at a Southeastern Conference stadium. You probably feel like already it's you against the world, and then when you see a call like that goes against you, you really feel like it's you against the world. So I don't blame him for being upset about that. I mean, should he upset it or not? He can't get fined, right? So why not just be honest about it? I really, I don't blame him. I would have been upset myself.
So you don't think the Sun Belt will fine him for him commenting on SEC officials?
They'll bonus him. I think they'll give him a bonus. Like go after those. That's the funny thing. That's the feeder system. The Sun Belt is the feeder system for the Southeastern Conference. So I think actually a lot of SEC guys work those Sun Belt games sometimes. So he might need to be careful who he's criticizing.
Yeah, I will jump in and tell you this. Another down thing for me in this game was when Bo was still the starting quarterback back in the first half. You drive to the 23, the 6, the 9, and the 28, and you get field goals instead of touchdowns there. I mean, that's concerning, even if you were playing, the best teams in the country, the Georgias and Alabamas who you have to play eventually. LSU next week on the road, Baton Rouge. But when you're doing that against Georgia State and you can't get touchdowns at the red zone, that's an alarming thing. And one of our commenters said something about the offensive line. I didn't think the offensive line, got a passing grade today at all. I mean,
not at all.
The focus is going to be all on quarterback, Brown. The whole conversation will be Bo and TJ. But that offensive line left a lot to be desired today.
You already saw before Bo Nix got pulled in the second half. In the first half, Jim, it almost looked like Gus Malzahn era Bo Nix, where he's running for his life. He's having to throw on the run. He's getting flushed. He's flushing early. All those things that used to be the bad habits of that Auburn offense and Bo Nix in particular, they just reared up today. It was just like all of a sudden Auburn flipped the page back to all the bad things they had been doing pre-Brian Harsin, and every single one of them seemed to sting Auburn today. But I'm with you. I thought the offensive line was not good at all. And again, you go back 1 week before to Penn State, Bo Nix didn't get sacked. How are you telling me? And I get it; these are college kids. They don't do the same thing twice, right? But how do you play a game on the road at Penn State and not give up a sack, and then give up that kind of pressure to Georgia State? It really defies belief how Auburn played this game today after what we saw 1 week ago. Because you mentioned it, Jim. You play an emotional game and you come back down. Alabama did that, and now they had a worse opponent in Southern Miss. Southern Miss not as good as Georgia State, but Alabama destroyed them. Florida did that. Now they were playing a conference game against what used to be a rival with Tennessee. Florida didn't have a letdown, so maybe those are just more mature teams. I don't know, but if you're Auburn, you got to figure out how you can go from as whatever you were Saturday night in Happy Valley back down to what you were today. You can't allow that to happen, because there's not a team left on the schedule that's as bad as Georgia State. Not one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the storyline becomes TJ going back to Baton Rouge, could be the starting quarterback. Let's give you one more on Brian Harsin comment after the game on the process of him making the switch. And Brian Harsin doesn't mix any words here on who made that decision.
Hey, Brian, just making the switch at quarterback from Bo to TJ. Can you just kind of talk us through your mindset there, and what was it about the offense in the third quarter where you kind of decided, okay, it's time to make a switch?
Well, you saw the same thing I did. We weren't really doing anything. We had played every running back. We played every wide receiver. You're not going to switch your offensive line out. And I made the decision to change and try to create some type of momentum at the offensive, at the quarterback position for the offense. And so that was my decision. That was my decision. That was something that, I tell our quarterbacks all the time, like, control what you can control. I've coached that position for a long time. I played that position. And, you can only control what you're doing on the field. And, guys around you have to make plays. That's the one thing about the quarterback position. You get way too much credit and way too much blame. And I made the decision to make a change and see if we could just create some momentum. And we did. And it worked in our favor.
All right. So that's Brian Harsin saying he's the one that made the change. He changed running backs, played all the running backs, all the wide receivers. He said he wouldn't change the offense. You can't substitute the entire offensive line. Some people would ask, why not? What would the
Well,
twos look like?
if the starters look that bad, I don't want to see the twos in there. And that's alarming too. Tank Bigsby, at least Bigsby and Hunter have been something you could depend on, right? And I
Right.
hate to keep going back to the Penn State game, but look at how well they both played in the Penn State game. And then today to see their performance, I mean, they got outrushed by Georgia State, Jim. 10 carries, 62 yards for Hunter, 18 carries, 60 yards for Bigsby, 3.3 per carry for Tank Bigsby, who's thought to be the best running back in the Southeastern Conference. And I believe that, but how he can only rush for 3.3 per carry against Georgia State, and then the second coming of Mike Allstott over on the other side
My
has got
goodness.
12 carries for 150 yards and a touchdown.
Yep.
Just what happened in this game defies explanation to me.
Yeah, 6 for 142 from Tucker Gregg,
Yeah.
who looks like he was running a military drill on his long 50-yard run where it's hut one, hut two, hut one, hut two, all the way down the field. He was chopping wood on that run, and it was and it was like he was running in 6 inches of water, and nobody was able to catch him. It was an amazing run, and the run gaps in the first half not very good. So Auburn gets the win, and that's the best thing you can say about what they did. And now, if I asked you next week, you start TJ, you start Bo. How do you roll into Baton Rouge?
Well, I mean, you got to play psychiatrist now. So, I mean,
we actually probably get to talk to Bo before Brian Harsin does, right? We talked to him Monday at 11.
I don't know what you do. If this were anybody else on the schedule, I probably think about starting TJ Finley, and he still may do that. But Jim, I just don't know about going back to LSU. Of all the teams to be next on the schedule, it had to be LSU, right? And the one
Right.
game TJ Finley comes in and takes over and gives you a spark to your offense. I mean, you got to play psychiatrist. You got to find out TJ Finley, just mindset wise, what's it going to be like for him going to Baton Rouge and starting? Are you going to try to do too much to get revenge? Is it too much of a pressure for you? There's too many emotions involved. But there again, like I said earlier, sometimes I think when you start a guy that knows he's on a short leash, that's almost worse than benching him. A guy that's afraid to make mistakes. I mean, you can't have Bo Nix out there playing scared to make mistakes. So, I mean, again, Brian Harsin, he's coached this position for a long time. He's got it, and Mike Bobo has too. They've got their hands full now. They've got, whether they want to admit it or not, and they've tried to distance themselves from it. They've got a full-fledged quarterback controversy here, and it's not an easy decision to make because I think most fans would just say, "Oh yeah, just start TJ Finley. He's the one that came in and led us to the win." I mean, I don't know about you, Jim, but I didn't think he was significantly better than what you were getting from Bo Nix. He maybe was on that one drive, but I don't think it was just a significant difference.
Yeah, the last play was a game-winning play.
Sure.
That was a fire drill situation. They had pressure. He scrambled and then made another good move to get away from more pressure when he turned and scrambled, but he threw the touchdown pass. So there's something there for TJ Finley to build off on. But I'm like you, man. I'm not sure there was any difference in TJ or Bo Nix. We will talk to Bo Nix on the next round live on Monday at 11 o'clock. He'll be with us every Monday, whether he's QB1 or QB2, part of our name, image, and likeness deal with him. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about Saturday's breakout games. A lot to get to. Alabama rolling against Southern Miss, and then all the stuff happening in the nation. Part of our broadcast being brought to you by the great folks at Mortgage Right. Anywhere in the U.S. you need a mortgage, Mortgage Right, the place to call. This is the next round. All right, we roll on, Brownie. Segment number 2 here as we do our Saturday breakout. Alabama and Southern Miss, the 100th consecutive win over an unranked team for Alabama. And, you think to yourself, of all the records, that one probably washes over you. Oh, they're beating an unranked team. But they have owned that record for a long, long time now, and they keep stacking it on top of each other. 100 wins for just so you know here. Clemson had won 36 straight against unranked teams, and they lost today. So that's how hard this streak is. And Alabama owns the record by a lot now of beating unranked teams. A lot of these upsets you see throughout the history of college football are unranked teams upsetting number one or ranked teams. So that is one record that probably gets, it's not, this many games in a row, or it's not 3 national championships in 4 years. But that's an impressive record, what Alabama does to these unranked teams.
Well, and obviously Clemson was in conference, and to be abundantly clear, you're not just talking about unranked out of conference. You're talking about unranked period. And Clemson was on the road in conference, which can be a tough place to play even against unranked teams. I think it's a function of a couple things. Number one, Jim, how often does Alabama play ranked SEC teams? A lot, right? So, their opportunities to lose to unranked conference teams is pretty small. But number two, just the focus that requires that you never have a letdown, ever have a letdown. You don't have something like what happened to Clemson today, where you let NC State hang around, and NC State misses all those field goals, and you still can't put them away, and you end up losing to them in overtime. It is a remarkable statistic that Alabama has gone that long without losing to an unranked team. And I just talked about Brian Harson's having to play psychiatrist. To me, Nick Saban's got a lot of strengths, but his best strength, his biggest strength to me, is his ability to coach the mental game, the mental side of football. And that statistic there, Jim, is a perfect reflection of that, is that mentally he makes sure his team is engaged enough in those games to win them. And they're generally, I'd like to know the average margin of victory versus unranked teams. I mean, I bet it is massive what that margin of victory is.
Another impressive performance tonight from Jamison Williams. And as Dirty DF says, has Jamison Williams become the number one weapon on the Alabama offense? We talk to John Mechie every Thursday, and we talked a little bit this week about whether Mechie was still the number one wide receiver on the team. But I think the number one home run threat, whether it's as a receiver or as we saw tonight, becoming the first Alabama player ever to return 2 kicks in one game, Jamison Williams is a threat. He's a playmaker. He's a burner. And boy, to think that he's on this team because of the transfer portal, you got to like that pickup for Alabama moving forward.
But he still only had 1 catch. As big a game as he only had the 1 catch, and he actually wasn't it him that bobbled the one that eventually got intercepted? If I'm not mistaken, it was Jamison Williams that bobbled the one that was the interception. Ultimately, they're going underneath a lot to Mechie. I mean, Mechie had 7 catches, but only 6.4 yards per reception. 7 catches, 45 yards. So they're giving him a lot of the screens and the underneath things. He almost had a touchdown. I can't wait to talk to him about this Thursday. He gave Cameron Latu a touchdown just by standing in the right spot. But Alabama, I mean, truthfully, Jim, their number one receiver might be Jaleel Billingsley. I mean, that's the guy that is open almost all the time. He's such a mismatch, and Bryce Young looks for him a lot. I think it's very encouraging to see Jamison Williams get that deep ball like that, because all that's going to do is open up the coverage. It's going to help Billingsley. It's going to help John Mechie, JoJo Earl, Slade Bolden, whoever else is working underneath. It's going to help those guys if you've got that deep threat. And even if Alabama doesn't hit the deep ball, if they don't complete it, just throwing it helps you with Williams' speed, because those safeties, and let me tell you what else is going to help. When those defensive coordinators see those 2 kickoff returns and see the speed that Williams has when he gets in the open field, those safeties are going to have to respect that, whether Alabama can hit that deep ball or not. You cannot, if he's even, he's leaving, right? That's the old saying.
That's right.
So you got to make sure you keep that guy in front of you. So that's going to help Alabama. That's going to help Bryce Young in Alabama's pass game in the intermediate with that speed of Jamison Williams.
Yeah, 42 first half points for Alabama. Then they let the starters drive it down for a little bit, finally started playing some more players. 63-14, Alabama wins it. So we've talked about Auburn getting out of Jordan-Hare with a homecoming win over Georgia State, Alabama over Southern Miss. One more note on Alabama. They have now scored 30-plus points for 30 straight games. That is one shy of the all-time longest streak for 30-plus games in a row. Do you know who holds that record?
So it's not an Alabama.
It's not an Alabama record. This is major college football. The record is 31 consecutive games of 30-plus points.
I would guess the early 90s Tom Osborne era Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Nope, it was UCF from 2017 to 2019. They did it 31 times per ESPN.
Speaking of
that?
Nebraska, that coach
Speaking
is
of-
now at Nebraska. Yep.
Speaking of Scott Frost there.
Who
So
can't buy a win to save his life, Scott
No.
Frost. He used to win games like that. Do you feel like Alabama fixed a lot of what they need to fix? This was the game where you could fix things between Florida and Ole Miss. And I do look, Southern Miss is no good, but I thought the defense looked much better this week.
yeah, but can you really tell? Can you really
I
tell?
don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't think you can tell. Ole Miss is going to be the challenge. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin this upcoming week. 2:30 CBS, Bryant-Denny Stadium. That's the test. Can you handle the speed? Can you handle a quarterback that can run and throw? Can you handle all the receivers? Can you handle running backs that can catch? That Ole Miss team. I mean, you guys joked with me at the start of last week when I was saying Ole Miss is a playoff national championship contender. But as you watched another Saturday of football, you can't tell me you have not looked at this Ole Miss team and you said, can you find me 15 teams better than Ole Miss? You can't.
No,
if I say, can you find me 10? Can you find me 10 teams better than Ole Miss? You're gonna be hard fought to find 10 teams better than Ole Miss.
Well, here's the truth that helps Ole Miss is the ACC is completely out of this thing now. They are finished. You can forget the ACC. It's over.
Whoa. Boston College and Wake are both unbeaten.
Okay. All right. I'll give you Boston College or Wake, and I'll take the rest of college football if you want to play that.
Boston College just beat the SEC.
They
Sorta.
did. They beat Missouri. Well,
Yeah.
late add to the SEC.
God, I watched a lot of that game. That's the first time
It was a good
ever.
game.
Yeah, but that's the first time ever. Missouri's the team in the league I didn't really want in, right? Texas A&M feels like an SEC team. Texas and Oklahoma are going to feel like SEC teams eventually. Missouri doesn't feel like an SEC team. But today, because of the whole Massachusetts comments, the way all of those people reacted to Missouri's coach Eli Drinkowitz saying that, it became the first time in my life that I was cheering for Missouri as an SEC team in one of those old us versus them games. And it was us, and us was Missouri for the SEC. Today's the first day I've cheered for Missouri as an SEC team against them, a Northern team in Boston College. And I was all in on Missouri, and they broke my heart at the end.
Well, you got to say the ACC is done. The Pac-12 is down to Oregon. And Oregon is, I think, a pretty good team. Oklahoma is super flawed. I don't even know, who would. The Big 12, Texas looked better today, obviously. They scored 70 on Texas Tech. My upset alert, Texas Tech. Did I hit that? Was that close?
No.
So to your point, yeah, I mean, you watch the rest of college football, and Ole Miss can beat a lot of these teams. We did laugh at you, and you're not wrong on this. Ole Miss can beat a lot of these teams. We'll learn a lot about them next week, obviously. Alabama's still going to be a 2-touchdown favorite, so that shows you Las Vegas, who takes the emotion out of this and looks at it, they still say Alabama's that much better than Ole Miss. So I think Ole Miss has got to prove that they've closed that gap on Alabama, and we'll see, man. We'll get the proof. Georgia's obviously got a good defense when they're playing teams that have a crappy offense. So we haven't seen Georgia play a good offense yet.
Okay, so let's bounce around. Okay, go ahead. Let's bounce around. Let's bounce around the rest of the SEC while we've got time here, and then we'll do the scope of stuff. Kentucky, they beat South Carolina. They're 2-0 to start the SEC for only the third time in the last 50 years. Now there's a stat for you.
That's a great stat, and Stoops does a tremendous job there. But here's my big concern for them. Is everybody made such a big deal about the way their offense played against Louisiana Monroe, and that Will Levis was changing their offense, and he did look better. But, Jim, they're slowly regressing back to the Eddie Grant offense. And tonight, they still ran the ball well, 40 carries for 230 yards, but 15 of 22 passing, 102, and an interception. Will Levis has hit earth. USA Today had him as a top 10 quarterback, which is ridiculous. We debated is he even top 5 in the SEC. I didn't think he was, and after tonight, I'm willing to drop him a little bit lower. That's a terrible South Carolina team. Probably Vandy is the only worst team in the Southeastern Conference, and they played them to one score in Lexington, in Columbia. That Kentucky team, they just keep regressing back to old Kentucky. They haven't fixed it yet.
Florida beats Tennessee. For a moment, it looked like Florida had a little bit of an Alabama hangover, and then they put the hammer down on the Volunteers, who, again, for a moment, Hendon Hooker and Tennessee looked like they were going to make Clay Travis come out of his pocket.
Hooker didn't play terrible. I was so pulling for that, by the way. For those that don't remember, Clay offered $50,000 for Florida player or Tennessee players split up if they beat Florida, and it was 14-10 at one point. I'm thinking, come on, Tennessee. Hooker, though, 13 of 23, 221, 2 touchdowns. He didn't play all that bad, but Florida put up 500 yards total offense. Florida, Emory Jones has found his game, I think, a little bit, Jim. I think he found his game against Alabama. 21 of 27, 209, 2 touchdowns, and he ran the ball 15 times for 144. So Emory Jones had 350 all-purpose yards in this game. He is becoming such a good weapon, and it felt like he found his confidence and found his game against Alabama in that second half last week, and it carried over into the Tennessee game. And we'll see, how much further it goes. They got the cocktail party coming up in about a month. That's your biggest game on that side of the SEC for sure.
Georgia beat Vandy easily, and then there was Arkansas and Texas A&M, the SEC on CBS game. And for whatever you want to say about KJ Jefferson, you can. AJ Green and Treylon Burks were just playmakers at receivers, but it really starts, man, with what that Arkansas defense has been able to do. With Barry Odom calling the shots, man, they have a plan, they have a scheme every week, and they seem to be confusing other offenses, but also they seem to be outplaying and out hustling other offenses.
Jim, I know that was the CBS 42 game, so you were on 42 there, so you got to watch a ton of that. Texas A&M, Arkansas was rushing 3 so much of that game and dropping 8, and A&M couldn't block 3.
Yeah, five against 3, Brand. Let me do you a demonstration. Yep. 3 and 5, and you should be able to block 3, but you can't.
I went to Sachs High School in Jacksonville State. I know that 5 outnumbers 3, Jim. Even I know that. But that was remarkable to me, is that Arkansas kept getting home to Calzada, just rushing 3. And, on one side of that, A&M has got some big-time offensive issues. Their offensive line is no good. Calzada, I don't think he's a great quarterback. Haynes King's on crutches. So they're dealing with Calzada for just a little while longer, probably even beyond the Alabama game, which is now their whole season. But on the flip side of that, I was so wrong about Sam Pittman, and I just continue to be amazed about what he did. If I had told you that Sam Pittman was going to have to play his backup quarterback for just about half that game, you wouldn't have thought they won that game. Nope. And he puts his backup in and finds a way to win the game, and you got to give Sam Pittman credit. That guy can flat out coach. Yep. And he made 2 good hires with Bryles, but specifically with Barry Odom. That guy flat out knows how to coach defense, and he had A&M at a kilter that entire game. They had the 1 home run hit from Isaiah Spiller, and that was pretty much it for them.
Hard to believe who the highest paid coach was in that game, because Pittman is that good of a coach. He at this moment, he would be in the running and maybe my vote getter for my national coach of the year. I'm on a couple of the Bowden trophies, or I don't know which ones I vote for, being a football writer. Right. I'll get an email at the end, but the ones I vote for right now, Sam Pittman is in the discussion for not just SEC, national coach of the year. So that sets up Arkansas going and playing Georgia next. Pittman didn't want to talk about that after the game, but that's a big matchup next week. So we got a couple of separation games next week: Arkansas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Auburn and LSU. Yeah,
Auburn and LSU. It's the best offense Georgia will have seen. I want Georgia to get tested, because this defense for Georgia looks amazing, but they just haven't played a very good offense yet, and that continued today. Vanderbilt's awful. Clemson's offense is terrible. UAB's offense is challenged a lot of times. South Carolina has no offense. They played Vandy today. This Arkansas offense, by far and away, is the best they will have faced as of yet. So I do find that a very intriguing matchup.
Okay, UAB has beaten Tulane 28-21. That was my upset alert. Outright win for the Blazers against the American Athletic Conference. So 28-21, and boy, that's a good win against a Tulane team on the road, emotional setting. So the Blazers win. Now Bill Clark and company bring that winning streak home to open up Protective Stadium this upcoming week. So that'll be the buzz all week in Birmingham to finally open up that stadium. We can't wait to celebrate with all the UAB folks and get ready for that game down at Protective Stadium against the Liberty team that is coming off a loss at Syracuse at the Carrier Dome, where they got beat up on Friday night. So the opportunity is there for UAB to beat a team with a lot of national recognition, Liberty, with Malik Willis, who's a pro prospect quarterback, and to open up that beautiful new stadium. The Blazers on a little bit of a roll. Congratulations to them getting the big win tonight. It was one of those games where it wasn't easy for UAB, but they led at the half 21-14 and then held on after taking a 28-14 lead and ended up winning that thing down in Tulane Ullman Stadium there tonight. When we come back, the rest of the country, and one more reaction from Brian Pittman. Not Brian Pittman, Brian Harsin, Sam Pittman's lost cousin. Yeah, Brian Harsin is at Auburn. Why he thinks the quarterbacks, whether it's TJ Finley or Bo Nix, have to play better. It has to do with the offense, and he thinks the offense is working. The quarterbacks just aren't delivering the football. That is next on the next round. All right, Saturday Breakout rolls on. Ryan Brown, Jim Dunaway, final segment here. If you're watching us live here on all the platforms, we appreciate you rolling with us on all the behind-the-scenes stuff we do to get these audio recordings out on the weekend so that you can listen to them Sunday or Monday morning before we go live again, 9 a.m. Central on all of our platforms Monday, and there'll be a whole lot to talk about then. Not only the great Saturday, week 4 in college football, but also the National Football League and some big games, including my favorite team, the Buccaneers, against LT's favorite team, the LA Rams. That'll be part of the conversation coming up on Monday. And yes, Bo Nix will be with us on Monday at 11 o'clock, part of our name, image, and likeness deal with him. He'll be with us throughout the year, whether he's QB1 or QB2. Here's Brian Harsin, Brownie, on the missed shots, the missed opportunities that made him switch quarterbacks and why it may not be done yet because TJ missed some too.
Looked like you had 3 or 4 opportunities to hit on touchdown passes and just couldn't connect. Can you talk about that? What a big factor it was?
Yeah, it's a big factor if you're going to miss touchdowns. And again, it's hard for me to say why without watching film. I can see it out there like you do. I can see it live. I know the play. I know the look. And, if we didn't connect on it, there's a reason why. And if it comes down to just the fundamentals, we can work on that. But if we're getting a chance to have those kind of plays, which are explosive plays, which we need, and we talked about it, we do need to find a way to get that done. We need to be a team that can create some explosives. We've been able to run the ball somewhat effectively in the games that we played, and now because of that, we need to find a way to be able to get some balls, some big plays down the field, and create some explosives.
There was a moment in the game way before, it was in the first half, when the students and some others in the stands started chanting for TJ. And then finally, TJ Finley came in. We'll get to the rest of the games in the nation, but that's not the only place that happened, Brown. It also happened in Norman, Oklahoma tonight, where Spencer Rattler and his Oklahoma Sooners win, but they were chanting Caleb. They wanted Caleb Williams to come in for Spencer Rattler. So, I mean, it's a new age we live in college athletics. I used to make headlines and coaches would get mad. Don't boo our players in our stadium. But now it is commonplace. At Auburn, they wanted a quarterback change, and they're doing it in Norman as well.
Yeah, I mean, even before Bo Nix got replaced in the second half, the fans were booing the offense after a missed third down conversion. And the offense kind of got booed off the field. You mentioned that in Norman. It was the booing that you heard there, and the "We Want Caleb" was happening. Kirk Herbstreit even brought it up. But the booing you heard there was on a second down. I think they had second 20-something, and they just ran a little swing pass out in the flat and got nothing, and the fans started booing. So, I mean, yeah, great deal of impatience there. And, I'll say this about Brian Harsin and that cut you played, and who knows what kind of coach he's going to be at Auburn yet. It is a little more refreshing. I don't know what Gus Malzahn's reaction would have been after this game. But I think Harsin, you'll have to give him credit. In the cuts you've played, he's been at least brutally honest. and has taken the blame and said, this is on me and it's my decisions and all those things. So I'll give Harsin credit for that. The answers are at least a little more entertaining than they used to be.
Let's react to some comments and then the games around the country. Michael jumps in on our YouTube feed. I'll repeat my Twitter post, Jim. Arkansas is going to be a problem, and a lot of exclamation points there. They are a really good team. When they play Georgia this week, later they play Alabama. How do you think that matches up?
Not good. They are a little too one-dimensional to beat those types of teams. I will say this: Traylon Burks at receiver is maybe the best receiver in the conference. That kid can play ball. And I love KJ Jefferson's toughness. I just don't know, Jim, that he is a quarterback that, I mean, when you see a team beat in Alabama, Nick Saban Alabama, generally that means they have gotten elite quarterback play. And I don't know that you're going to get that at Jefferson. I mean, you just look today. He had a good game today, 7 of 15, 212, 2 touchdowns, but only 7 completions. He had a couple of home run balls, the one big long one that I think was 85 yards. I just don't know that they're going to have the refined passing game to beat an Alabama or a Georgia. Just 9 of 19 passing today. That's just I don't know that you're going to be able to run it the way they do, which is today 50 carries in that game. I don't know that you're going to be able to line up and do that on an Alabama and a Georgia.
Dirty Def says, does Brian Kelly get enough credit? He passed Newt Rockne. It was enough today. My headline was Newt enough. I had Wisconsin winning the game. It was enough, and it wasn't close. Rarely do you see back-to-back pick sixes, but that's what they got today. Notre Dame did as they pulled away. The game was closer than the score indicated, but it was a convincing Notre Dame victory today.
What was weird was, you had the two quarterbacks that are tied together, Cohn and Mertz. Mertz was terrible. I mean, you mentioned the 2 pick sixes. He was bad all day. Cohn wasn't a ton better. And then they go to Drew Pine because Cohn gets hurt for Notre Dame. The backup is injured. Pine is the third teamer, and he was the best quarterback in the game. It really made no sense whatsoever. But Pine comes in, and he steadies Notre Dame. He leads them down the field. He leads them to the win. And then Graham Mertz just starts throwing up all over his cleats. Wisconsin's a mess, man. They're good defensively, not great defensively, but Mertz is not a very good quarterback. So Wisconsin's got some huge issues. Notre Dame just keeps surviving. It'll catch up with them at some point.
Speaking of, they get number 8 to Cincinnati. It'll be higher. Cincinnati this week. Speaking of a mess, so is Clemson's offense. They lose it in overtime, but it was 14-14, and NC State had a chance to win it. And that brings up a question from Eric. Players getting paid opens up criticism for performance. Whether it's Bo or in this case DJ Uiagalelei, who is struggling as the only quarterback in Fanville. That Clemson offense not doing their defense right. Finally, the defense ends up breaking.
Well, they can't run the ball. They can't block for DJ. He really doesn't throw the ball very well. Just looking at his numbers, 12 of 26, 111, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Their running backs, Jim, and Shipley went out hurt. They combined for 41 rush yards. DJ had 63. They had 103 on the ground at NC State today. They struggle to run the football. And, they may take some more losses. I don't know. It's so hard to figure out the ACC. I guess NC State's the best team in that conference. I don't know. I mean, they got run out of Starkville, NC State did. And State's lost 2 in a row since then. North Carolina got drilled by Jeff Collins and Georgia Tech, so it's not North Carolina. They now have 2 conference losses. Maybe Boston College would beat Missouri. Maybe Wake. That is a mess of a conference right now. I don't even know who's good and who's bad in that conference.
Yeah, well, I really don't know that about most of the teams in the country. It's feeling like 2007. If something ever happens to Alabama and Georgia, then if we get any chaos at all in the SEC at the top of each division, it's going to feel a lot like 2007 again, where we crowned a 2-loss national champion. All right, we got 5 minutes to go here, Brownie, a little over 5 minutes. So we've talked Oklahoma, we talked Notre Dame, we talked NC State upsetting Clemson. You just mentioned Georgia Tech. Our buddy Jeff Collins get getting probably his biggest win to date as the head coach of the Yellow Jackets. Let's go Iowa. Iowa had to rally to get their win today over Colorado State, a Colorado State team that lost to Vandy.
Oh,
They lost to Vandy.
yeah. Yeah, 24-14, Iowa beats Colorado State. And there again, just when you think Iowa, who's number 5, by the way, might belong in this, they can rush for only 54 yards against Colorado State. Make that one make sense. Try to make that one make sense. At home, 32 carries, 54 yards, 1.7 yards per carry for a team against a team that couldn't even beat Vanderbilt. I mean, you don't want to make it a one game rash judgment, rash decision. But if you can't run the ball any better than that against Colorado State, you do not belong in the national championship discussion. I'll make it a one game conversation because Colorado State is awful. And that shows you that Iowa just is, they're a pretender. They are not a real contender. So I don't think they belong in the discussion. Not sure Ohio State does either. I know they've already got the one loss. That score doesn't show they struggle with Akron early, and we know how bad Akron is.
And Ohio State's one of their best wins over Minnesota. Minnesota got beat by Bowling Green today.
Jim, Minnesota's terrible. I mean, they go out and I don't know. I can't figure them out because they go out and beat Colorado 30-0 and lose to Bowling Green. How do you make those two games make sense?
Yep. Good for UCLA to bounce back over Stanford, 35-24. Big win for Chip Kelly. Jim Harbaugh's team, 20-13 over what was an unbeaten Greg Schiano Rutgers team. They jumped out, 20-3, and then held on to win that one.
Yeah, that's they are. You want to talk about a one-dimensional team? That's the most one-dimensional team in all of football. They just don't even try to throw the ball. They almost play. They don't play the triple option, but they almost play football, Jim, like a service academy. It is just run, and that's what they did again today. I mean, that's just who they are. I mean, I guess they're just not going to try to throw the ball much at all this year. But even that, they still had 112 rush yards. They struggled to move it. They finally found a team that could slow them down a little bit. So I don't know who to believe in the Big Ten. It's probably still Ohio State's conference, but I don't believe in Iowa. And I think you saw today that when Michigan plays a team with a halfway competent defense, they can't just run the ball the way they want to.
Baylor beat Iowa State, so Iowa State's got a couple of losses now. Baylor is 4-0 with Dave Aranda right there. So we've got a little over 2 minutes now, Brownie. Biggest takeaway from today is what for you? Biggest takeaway?
Well, I think it's kind of what our theme has been. You don't know anything about anybody hardly. The teams I feel like I got a pretty good feel on are Alabama and Georgia.
Okay, say that again. You broke up a little bit. Give me those two teams again. Give me a clean read so I can make an edit.
The teams I feel like I've got a good feel on that are legitimate contenders, I think, are Alabama and Georgia. I don't know that I've got a good feel for anybody that's a true contender beyond those two teams. And I'm still a touch hesitant on Georgia and maybe even on Alabama too. Let's see them against Ole Miss. I just need to see Georgia play a competent offense. But they're just such erratic performances by even the contenders, Jim, between their best games and their worst games now. And I mean, it is just such a big gap between best game and worst game. It is really, really hard to get a feel for these teams that seem to be in the national championship hunt.
I agree with you. I mean, to me, as I sit here, the gap between Alabama, Georgia, and the rest of the country seems to be pretty big. And I know that that seems like, we're sitting here in Birmingham, Alabama, home of the SEC offices, like that's the biggest homer take of all time. But it does seem like there's Alabama, Georgia, and then you don't know what you're going to get on the other side. Not saying those teams can't lose, just saying I don't know what you're going to get every week. I've never seen the AP poll look this bad before. And it's not the AP. It's not their voters' fault. Yeah. Not the voters' fault.
I don't know how I'd vote in it. I mean, I don't see 10 top 10 teams. And I know I got to put 10 in there, but I don't see 10 top 10 teams. So I don't even know how you vote in an Associated Press or coaches poll right now.
Yep. And, the only team I thought I was going to get consistency out of, Jack State, they lose today to Tennessee Martin after beating Florida State. So will you be back on your bash the coach bandwagon?
That's a bad loss right there. You can't take a loss like that. They're 3-2 now, man. They're
Yeah.
3-2. That's a bad loss.
Good win for UAB, good win for Alabama, and you got to call it a good win for Auburn because they almost pulled a Jeremy Pruitt Tennessee team and lost to Georgia State. But the Tigers win on homecoming. They go to Baton Rouge next week. UAB opens up Protective Stadium, and it's Lane and Nick, Alabama and Ole Miss, and we'll have it all covered on the next round. Thanks for being with us, folks, and we'll see you live at 9 a.m. Central Monday on all of our platforms on the next round. All right, my friend. That is 46 minutes and some seconds.
All
Thank
right.
you all for listening. I apologize to those that are watching on Twitter and Facebook. For some reason, as we added some other platforms here, it is not showing your comments. The Twitter folks, where we usually get our most comments, we were dealing YouTube only tonight in our comments. So we appreciate all you guys watching on YouTube. But for the Twitter folks who have carried us for a couple of years on this, 3 years with your comments, I apologize. I'll have it fixed hopefully before Friday, because I think we're using some sort of this setup for Brown Right for our first live show on the next round.
That's the plan. Yeah, that is the
Yeah.
plan.
So if there
so
is
we
a
turned our
chance,
back on the Twitter people, is what you're saying.
well, not intentionally, but we were already into
Oh, I
this, and
know.
I couldn't stop and reset anything. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to do. We'll
I don't
figure it out.
either. Yeah, you
I'll
need
have-
to go to your StreamYard manual and see how this thing works.
Well, I'm going to blow this one up. I'm going to let the company buy the next one, and then we'll start over. We'll start over and do all the settings again and try to do that.
Double Down Media is gonna pay.
Yeah, I had to dump the Periscope and sign in on Twitter tonight. And so I guess that's where the change happened. But I do apologize to all you guys who are watching us on Twitter. But thanks for being with us. If you missed any of this, it's about to replay tomorrow on our app streaming service all the way until we're live again on Monday at 9 o'clock. All right, Brownie, enjoy the rest of your night. Pac-12 after
All
dark.
right.
So long, everybody.
Good night, everybody.